Today I'm going to demonstrate this process using a Dell Precision T3400 desktop computer. Static charge can easily ruin components, so here I am touching an earth metal object such as a fridge. These are the tools that I'll be using to disassemble and reassemble the computer, most importantly a Phillips screwdriver. Let's begin. First, making sure that the computer is off, I unplug it from the wall and remove all input-output devices. The Bluetooth mouse and keyboard are connected via USB ports, and the screen connects using a digital visual interface cable, DVI for short. I can now remove the side panel to access the components inside. Here I remove the motherboard's main power connector with 24 pins, but I can't access the smaller auxiliary 12-volt connector. Next I focus on unplugging cables that I have easy access to. The SATA cables for the optical drive and hard drive. They've just been unplugged from the motherboard, so I'll tuck them to one side and start to unscrew the power supply. I will put the screws into a little plastic container and clearly label them with what they're for. That way I can easily find them when I go back to put the computer together. As this is a pre-built computer, it has never been pulled apart or upgraded, so all the components are a bit reluctant to move. Because of the cables running underneath the heatsink and fan, it seems logical to move these out of the way. The heatsink helps dissipate heat from the CPU, with the fan diffusing the heat out. Without these two critical components, the CPU would fry itself. Once the heatsink is removed, I have access to the input-output cables, SATA cables, power connectors, and the 12-volt auxiliary cable. SATA stands for Serial Advanced Technology Attachment. Both the hard drive and the optical drive are SATA drives. With all cables disconnected from the motherboard and components, I can now remove the power supply. In order to pull out the optical drive, I need to remove the front bezel. This also gives me access to the front panel peripherals port. The hard drive is removed and placed on a soft surface to prevent damage. The RAM or random access memory is carefully removed from the DIMM sockets. RAM are installed in pairs of matched memory. Finally, the system fan is removed. My footage of removing the graphics card and CPU has disappeared, but these were also removed, and I'll talk about them more when I reassemble the computer. Also, for the sake of the length of this video, I have left the front and rear input-output ports attached and have left the motherboard still attached. Now I'm ready to reassemble the computer. The central processing unit that I have is an Intel quad-core with a processing speed of 2.4 GHz. With the CPU seated, I place the heatsink and the system fan, affixing the heatsink with a Phillips screwdriver, making sure to evenly distribute the tension across the screws. The RAM is now being seated into the DIMM sockets. In total I have 4 GB. RAM allows data to be read and written almost at the same time, and it is cleared when the computer is turned off, unlike the hard drive. I then reinstall the hard drive. It just slots in, and so does the optical drive. As a safety measure, I ground myself, then it's onto the optical drive. I open the latch and it just slides in. Next we've got the bezel to go on the front to cover the optical drive. The graphics card connects to the motherboard in a PCI slot. PCI stands for Peripheral Component Interconnect. Another example of this is the network card, which enables me to connect to the internet. I install the last fan, and it is connected to the motherboard with a Molex connector, the same as the CPU's fan connector. Due to the hard drive creating heat, the fan will help keep it cool when it's running. And there we have it, plugging it in. Now I can put the power supply unit back into place. Remember, this was the first thing we took out and the last thing I'm putting back in. The first cable I plug back into the motherboard is the main 24-pin motherboard connector, followed by the 12-volt auxiliary plug. I then aim to find logic in the order of connecting the cables. The input-output ribbon cable is connected to the motherboard and the front panel's port. The Molex power connectors are rerouted to reach the hard drive. It's vitally important that the cables are routed the same as before I disassembled the PC. This reduces the risk of damage to the components and pinching of wires. It might not have been clear, but I did plug in the Molex power connector to the optical drive. It is a fiddly process, however I can clean up the cables with cable ties later. The SATA cables are connected to the hard drive and the motherboard, also the optical drive and the motherboard. I clean up some of the cables while I'm working, so it makes it a little bit easier. The power supply is then reaffixed to the case, and I also do a finely tidy up of the cables. Next, the front panel is affixed, and now we can put on the lid once we are satisfied with what we've done. Now I can connect the main power lead and input-output devices, the monitor with the DVI cable and the two USB keyboard and mouse. A network cable is connected to an Ethernet port on the computer and the modem in order to access the internet. I found this old mouse which uses a trackball and a DB9 connector. I'm not going to use it though. I have here a Bluetooth optical mouse. I'll just plug it in the USB port. Right, now I've got the keyboard that goes into the USB port too. Now I can plug in the computer and power it on. Let's see what happens. When the computer is turned on, the computer loads data from the read-only memory. It then performs a power-on self-test to assure the major components work. The computer then loads basic input-output system from the read-only memory, providing basic information on storage devices, boot sequence, plug-and-play, etc. The operating system is loaded from the hard drive to the RAM. And ta-da! Thank you.